Here's a headline you may have come across recently. Meta-analyses confirm that ChatGPT enhances student learning. Is that accurate? Hello everybody and welcome to this week's From Theory to Practice, where I take a look at the research so you don't have to. Now, as you know, we're taking a journey through my new book, The Digital Delusion, and in this video we're going to take a look at chapters 6 and 7, AI, Artificial Intelligence, which I've subtitled, The Tool Nobody Asked For, Solving Problems Nobody Had. Now, recently, 3 meta-analyses have come out showing that ChatGPT can boost learning in K-12 classrooms. And when we pool those 3 analyses together, it does so at an effect size of positive 0.54. So in this video, I want to take a look at those 3 meta-analyses and see, is that value accurate? And how should we be thinking about this? So real quick, let's just start with a discussion of effect sizes. What does that mean? So meta-analyses, what they do is they pool data together from a bunch of different papers and they pop out a single number which sums up what all those papers were saying. And that is an effect size. And in most academic fields, a positive effect size means something has had a benefit, a 0 effect size means there was no effect, and a negative effect size means that thing harmed whatever you were measuring. So positive, good, negative, bad, 0, 0. Now that works in almost every scientific field except for those in the social sciences. John Hattie recently analyzed over 350,000 effect sizes from education, what impacts learning, and he found over 95% of them were positive. So basically, when it comes to education, everything works. There is no 0 and there is no negative, which means we cannot use the same scale when it comes to educational research. Now, how is it possible? How is it possible that everything works? Well, there's 2 big explanations. One is, of course, publication bias. You get a lot more traction when you publish positive results than negative. But the other is there's a lack of a standard control in education. In medicine, everything must be compared to a placebo. So we have one baseline for everything. But in education, you can compare your new idea to anything you want. If you invent a new computer program, you can compare it to standard teaching, you can compare it to other computer programs, you can compare it to kids learning on their own, you can compare it to absolutely nothing, which happens way more than you think it should. So because there's no standard control in education, we need a new baseline. What should it be? John Hattie says the average effect size across all those 350,000 articles he reviewed is about 0.42. So he says this should be the baseline. Anything above that, good. Anything below that, bad. If you just look at year-on-year average growth among students, that sits at around 0.45 standard deviations. So maybe that should be our baseline. But if you ask the guy who invented the effect size we measure, he says it should be 0.5. Anything below this is basically useless or unmeasurable. You need to be above this level to see any meaningful impact in the classroom. But let's give ChatGPT and AI the benefit of the doubt. Let's use the less stringent baseline 0.42. We need to get above this value for something to be meaningful in education. So going back, we see, our 3 meta-analyses have positive 0.54. That is above our baseline. It looks like ChatGPT can help. But wait, there's more. Let's go through these 3 analyses real quick and see what these researchers did, or more realistically, what they failed to do. So the first paper is here. Does ChatGPT enhance student learning? This was published in Computers in Education, which is a Q1 journal, a very good journal. And they found 10 K-12 studies that combined gave us an effect size of positive 0.58, looking good. But here are the 10 studies they used. If we zoom in, we're going to find something interesting. First, these 4 papers from Elianati are reprints of the exact same data. Now, in research, that is a giant no-no. You cannot publish the same data twice. They did it on 2 separate occasions, so already we got an issue here. But more importantly, if you dive into all that research, Al-Nayati never explains what he did with ChatGPT. He just said some kids used it, some didn't, but he didn't tell us what his method was, which means that is non-replicable research, which means it doesn't belong in a meta-analysis. So really we're down to 6 studies, but in 2024, didn't compare AI to anything. Kids simply used it and they compared it to their baseline. So we don't know if they were doing better than other kids, worse than other kids. It just basically said you can learn from this tool, which is irrelevant. So that shouldn't have been included. That leaves us with 5 studies. When we reanalyze those 5 studies that should have been included, we get a new effect size of positive 0.27, well below our 0.42 mark. But that's okay. The next meta-analysis must do better. So this is the effect of ChatGPT on students' learning, and this was published in Humanities and Social Sciences Communications, which is a journal of Nature. So this is top tier. This is as good gets. This meta-analysis included 5 studies from K through 12 and had a combined effect size of 0.43. So just a little above what we need it to be. But let's take a look at those 5 studies. Do you notice anything familiar? Uh-oh. Al-Nayati is back, the group that replicated data and never explained how they used the tool, so that shouldn't be included. And Kucherman 2023 asked teachers to use AI. No kid ever touched it, and there was no measure of learning, simply teacher reports on how they used it. So that has nothing to do with learning and shouldn't have been included. That leaves us with 3, and Yang 2025. These researchers found that AI harmed learning, but in this meta-analysis, they flipped the sign and made it beneficial to learning. Yep, somehow an article in Nature completely flipped a sign from negative to positive and no one noticed. When we reanalyze these 3 papers and put Yang back to what it actually said, we get a new effect size of negative 0.08. This tool is not good for learning, but that's okay. Meta-analysis number 3 is going to save the day. The impact of ChatGPT on students' academic achievement. This was published in the Journal of Computer-Assisted Learning, another Q1 journal, so it should be good. Here, they've got 5 studies with a combined effect size of 0.61, but when we look at those studies, what do you see? We've got Al-Nayati back, who never explained what they did, and Kucherman, who only used teachers, so those shouldn't exist, leaving us with 3. And if you look at Rashed 2024, they only asked kids what they thought about learning. At no point did they measure actual learning. They just asked kids, do you think you learned more with AI? Well, mate, if you ask me how I think I did at the gym, I'm going to tell you pretty good. But if you want to know how I really did, you better measure something else. So that doesn't belong in this meta-analysis. That leaves us with 2 usable studies with a combined effect size of positive 0.13. Nowhere near what we need. And now the grand finale. Why don't we together do a real meta-analysis of our own? Here are the 7 studies published to date exploring the impact of ChatGPT on learning in K through 12 classrooms. When we pool the data from all these studies, we get a combined effect size of positive 0.17. This is nowhere near the positive 0.42 we need to say this is beneficial for learning and education. So we're back. Meta-analysis confirmed that ChatGPT enhances student learning. No. When you understand the nuance of how research is done in education specifically, you realize no, meta-analyses do not confirm that ChatGPT enhances student learning. So let's bring this back to us. What does this mean for us as teachers in schools? First, we gotta be incredibly wary of the hype going on right now around AI. Right now, AI is the tool that's going to save education, but the people saying that are the people with the most vested interest in that tool being injected into education. Whether they're developers or programmers or working for AI companies themselves, of course they're going to tell us these tools help. That's what people in business do. So we've got to learn to get a really thick skin and cover our ears and eyes a lot when it comes to reporting on AI, at least for the next 5 to 10 years till we get better data. Which brings us to the next idea is we've got to beware of the decline effect. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but when a new tool or technology or therapy comes out, the first wave of research is almost exclusively done by proponents, people who want that thing to work. That means the first about 5 years of research of any tool is very positive. It's over the next 5 to 10 years that you start to see a decline. Once researchers who are disinterested, people who have no vested interest in a tool, start doing research on that tool, that's when we start to see the real impact and effect sizes really start to drop. So as a couple of examples, there's a thing called ego depletion. It was a theory in psychology that when it was first introduced had an effect size of 0.60. But over the last 5 decades, as more researchers have played with it, people who don't really need it to work have started doing research on it, that has dropped to 0.25. That's a 58% decline. Go to diet, omega-3 fatty acids. When people started talking about those, they had a positive effect size on heart health of 0.27. Today, that's down to 0.04. That is an 85% decline. Bring it back to education. The impact of growth mindset interventions on learning. When Carol Dweck started her work 20 years ago, positive 0.66. Today, 20 years later, that is down to 0.05. That is a 92% decline. So when a tool is new, like AI is, we can expect the research to be way overinflated in the first 5 to 10 years because only the people who really love this tool are the ones doing the research. We've got to wait a little bit of time till we start seeing what's really going on here. And our final thing is then beware of unexamined statistics. Now, this is the tricky one. As a researcher, I'm well trained in statistics, so I'm able to take a meta-analysis and within an hour figure out where they did all their shortcutting and how valid their outcome is. As teachers, that's a little trickier to do, and I don't think all teachers should take a class in statistics or research methods. But schools, school districts at the leadership level may want to consider employing a statistician or a researcher, even part-time, but someone who effectively dive into emerging literature and let the rest of the school knows, yes, this is meaningful, no, this is not. Yes, this is valid, no, this is invalid. So again, I don't know what that looks like, but I think rather than training teachers to be researchers, all we need is at least one researcher on a team, whether that's at the district level, the state level, whatever, who can cut through the hype to help teachers recognize what is genuinely working in education and what's just noise. So that's a quick look at chapter 6 and 7 on artificial intelligence. Again, my book, The Digital Delusion, comes out on December 7th, 2025. And if you'd like to take a look at more information, you can visit us online at www.lmeglobal.net, or you can take a look at our award-winning Science of Learning program for teachers and students called The Learning Blueprint. Otherwise, thank you all so much, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye, everyone.